Tonight on Free Minds TV, we'll be discussing coffee, dry ice, an unemployed woman, and a drunk guy on a scooter. All that coming up tonight on Free Minds TV.
You have tuned in to episode 164 of Free Minds TV, and as always, it is Toby here with you.
And Nick.
This is the show where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box, and we will be doing so today by traveling all around the country, all around the world, and talking about interesting news stories, and hopefully relating them back to freedom, liberty, or thinking outside the box in some respect. We are going to be talking about dry ice. The danger of making dry ice bombs, Nick. This has landed some people into some hot water, as well as a story about some of the benefits of drinking coffee, as well as getting into a drunk man on a wheelchair. He's facing some pretty stiff penalties. But first, I want to talk about the unemployed, Nick. And some of them, they just get too much money for their sitting on their derrieres all day. I want to travel across the pond to this one, to one old bat who's collecting, about $56 million a year to do nothing. Nick, what's the latest? Why does this old woman get so much taxpayer money?
Well, in this particular case, this one old woman is the Queen of England.
Oh.
And the Queen of England receives a lot of taxpayer money. For those in the United States, since a lot of our viewers are in the United States, well, you might not know that she really is still a queen. She still gets paid with government money. It's not like the monarchs are just rich people who have money and kind of put that on as a show. That's actually funded by the state. And apparently, the cost of supporting the monarchy, according to accounts published Monday by Buckingham Palace, was £38.2 million, which in American English is $57.8 million.
Wow!
Which,
to do what, Nick? What does the Queen do?
She's the head of state.
She's the head. What does that mean? Is she like the president?
She's a figurehead. I mean, it's a
I don't know much
symbolic
about these crazy people in the UK, Nick. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not well versed in it, and I don't know what the Queen does. I know that she's old, and she waves, and she has a crown and a scepter sometimes, and she's Elizabeth II, or is that the one we're on? Number dos, and she collects a lot of taxpayer money. Other than that, does she have any responsibilities? I mean, I'm calling her an unemployed woman, but I don't know. Does she work for her money, Nick? Does she actually do stuff, or is she just lazy?
I mean,
and sits around
the
most of
monarchy is a symbolic thing. I think it seems crazy to Americans and a lot of people who live in countries where there's not a monarchy that in a supposedly developed country, you still have this concept of having a king or queen that the common people actually have to pay to support just because, they're anointed by God? Is that the actual idea here? Most Britons wouldn't tell you that. They just tell you, well, it's tradition.
It's kind of like we have the president. They're essentially kings, and the first ladies are queens.
They have a lot more power than the Queen of England actually has. Day to day, they actually do a lot more things. The Queen of England is really...
She is unemployed, so I was right when I went
more
down on
or
a
less. I
limb and said
mean,
that.
the monarchy does actually still have some functions in British government,
Yes,
but it doesn't wield any real power.
Yes, she makes people... Why do people care, though? That's the point.
It's tradition.
I don't get. Tradition? Is
Yeah,
it worth
it seems
that much?
foreign to...
What's that, like $1 a day for each person?
No,
or
it's more like $1 a year. It's actually...
I mean, that's what I meant. I'm sorry, $1 a year in taxpayer money?
Yeah, it's 94 cents per person.
I'll give
American
$1 to a
currency.
homeless man on the side of the street, but not to some queen with a gold scepter. It boggles my mind.
Well,
in this day and age, why?
It seems very primitive.
Throw her on the street.
Maybe that's because we're Americans. I mean,
Let her keep her crown.
Independence Day
and put her
just
on the
got
street.
over, so maybe we're kind of in that anti-monarchy mode, but it seems to make sense.
I'm ready to overthrow her
In
a
a civilized
second time,
society.
Nick. Let's overthrow the queen and the king.
Well,
Is there a king? Does she
I
have
don't
a-
pay for it.
Where'd he go? Are they divorced?
She's dead.
Oh,
She's been
bummer.
dead for a long time.
Old king.
But I did want to point out they are cutting back.
Oh, good.
They're not that extravagant. They're going to be cutting back like let's see. I think they're going to be cutting £500,000 £500,000 from their budget for palace maintenance.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
okay. So
yeah, property
we're not
services
wasting
budget.
any
But
money
they're
here.
going to be cutting back the maintenance of
Yes.
Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle.
So that's what this whole article is about. Oh, if they're going to be trimming the fat by a little less than
But
$1
she
million
still lives
a year or
taxpayer
something.
supported in castles and palaces.
Castles.
A
They
palace.
still have those?
A palace, yes. Buckingham Palace is a real palace.
Are they
and
made
there's
of
a real
stone?
monarch in there.
Are there dragons?
Yes, they're old buildings.
And cages?
I don't know if there's actual dragons. There's probably stone dragons.
It sounds so medieval and foreign to me.
It is, yeah. But whatever. I mean, I guess people in the UK, from what I understand, what I've heard is the monarchy over there is fairly popular. So the odds of the political, the odds of the political process
These
doing
people
away with
really
it
are
very
from
good.
a different planet, aren't they, Nick? They're crazy over there. They love their nanny state and they love their queen.
Well, to be fair, I mean, when you look at a lot of the nanny state legislation, the UK is maybe a decade ahead of the United States. They also face a heavier tax burden, really a generally more socialist system. But again, the United States is closing that gap pretty quickly, especially in areas of economic liberty. So people who've tried to actually quantify how much government intervention there is, say in the economy, they've pointed out that the US is rapidly catching up to the UK. In real terms, there's not a whole lot of difference at this point when it comes to things like property rights and the rights of business owners between the UK and the US. So at least in some respects, we're very close to the policies that exist in the UK, but obviously they still have some quirks, like they still have a monarch. So I guess that's what the
What's a
American
monarch?
Revolution was good for.
What do they do? They've got the queen.
They're an unemployed person who takes money from production.
So there's more than just
the monarch
queen.
is the king.
Oh.
The queen.
Oh, but he's dead, so we don't pay him anymore.
No, the queen's still the monarch.
Oh. Is a monarch is the king or the queen?
It's whoever, yeah, right.
So how many other little
It's a
unemployed
monarchy.
people are running about collecting this money? Are there princesses and Princess Diana? Was she one of them? Was she collecting money from the taxpayers
the royal family,
too?
yeah.
All of them get it.
I don't know that they
Cousins
draw
do?
a paycheck, but they're supported. They're supported by
What's the
taxpayer
difference?
money. Well, it's not as direct, I guess.
Nick.
But I guess that's all the American Revolution was good for. Was we don't have the Queen.
Maybe
we have all the other
that's
crap
why,
that they
Nick.
have
Okay,
in the
we've been
UK.
talking about this a lot on with the 4th of July happening and on the radio show on the last couple episodes of the TV show. We've been talking about why are Americans so apathetic nowadays. I mean, the government is much more harsh and overlordish than it was when they revolted in the 1776. It's a puny government they revolted against compared to what we've got today. Do you think the only difference is that it's easier to revolt against a king or a queen?
I think in part, yeah. I think in part there's a lot more faith in the system when supposedly the government can actually throw it back on the people. When you have a representative, basically a democracy, technically it's supposed to be a representative republic.
Unquote.
But when you have a democracy, the government can say, well, hey, we're representing you guys. We're representing the people. So whatever the government does, they can say, well, it's in the name of the people. You actually voted for it. You actually have some control over it. And to some extent, the ballot box it's sort of a release valve. It's a blow-off valve. So when people get angry, well, they can vote for the other party. Of course, when you live in a country like the United States, where you have two parties that pretty much completely dominate the system, and they're not very different, then voting for Republicans when Democrats are in office and vice versa doesn't actually affect too much real change, but it makes people feel better.
Yeah, I guess we overthrow our king every 4 to 8 years and just put a new one in there that just gets worse. Oh.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend. I mean, I'm not dumb. I'm not saying that, you know,
an elected king.
No, being that there should be, I think there's some need to have government around. I think it should be run democratically. I think it should ultimately be governed by the people. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that everything they do is great, whereas it would be worse if a king did it. I think people are just more likely to tolerate a democratically elected government.
Yes, it's your fault. And if you don't vote, you can't complain, right, Nick? That's how it works here in America. So no complaining out there. Well, I'm not going to complain for this next story. In fact, I'm elated. I'm happy because it really relates to me. And when I pick the internet, I try to pick ones that go in my favor to fit my worldview, if you haven't noticed. And one of the things in my worldview is coffee drinking. Now, everyone tells you that you shouldn't drink so much caffeine, but I mean, it's a legal drug and it's a crutch that I lean on heavily. In fact, over these past few days, I haven't been getting much sleep. It's been hundreds of degrees well, 100 degrees at least, and it doesn't cool down too much at night, and it's hard for me to sleep with all this heat. So I don't sleep, I get up and I go to Dunkin' Donuts instead, and I get myself some coffee, and then I drink more coffee and just drink lots of coffee throughout the day. And everyone says, well, you're going to die because you're drinking so much coffee. And I say, well. This little gem I pulled up, and not just from any kooky website out there. This is coming from NPR, National Public Radio, the national one, and not just New Hampshire, the National Public Radio. It's appealing that our nation, that our daily pick-me-up may also confer a range of health benefits. And for coffee drinkers, there's a lot of research precluding. Precluding, is that the word? Precluding. See, I haven't gotten much sleep in the last few days.
I'm not actually looking at the page.
Yeah, good job.
As the viewers can tell.
Several studies suggest that a daily caffeine habit may protect against Alzheimer's disease. The researchers say 500 milligrams of caffeine, or about 5 cups of regular coffee a day, is the dose that seems to protect the brain. So those people who have been telling me every day at work, why not just have 1 cup of coffee? I say, well, don't want to get Alzheimer's.
Well, what are your risks of getting Alzheimer's compared to your risks of getting, say, heart disease?
Heart disease? Nick, we've already reported on stories that say, and they might have come from kookier websites, that research has suggested that a cup or 2 a day can help the heart.
A cup or 2 a day, not 5 or 6 or 10.
Like I said, Nick, this is hand-picked to fit my world
That's mentioned your blood vessels throughout the rest of your body.
Blood vessels, they feel great. Supplest.
Until you have an aneurysm.
Anyways, this story is, it has a couple of different research parts. There's several studies here. They have done quite a bit of mouse studies. They give the mice Alzheimer's, or they find mice with Alzheimer's. I'm not sure exactly how the research is done, but anyways, they take all these mice with Alzheimer's and they give them caffeine, and then they make them do little mice tests. And they found that the ones who have lots of caffeine do much better. And so they go, well, how's that relate to a person? You're talking about a mouse here, and people, that's different. You can't just say that. Well. A few decades of research here is also showing that human observations, researchers in Finland tracked 1,400 coffee drinkers, large coffee drinkers like lots of cups a day, 4 to 5 a day, and found that people who drank 4 to 5 cups of coffee a day were 65 to 70% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, Nick, when they got old.
It's interesting.
Well,
I think you'd have to, I'm not going to advise anybody to drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, just because this one study says it's good for you.
No, not one, Nick.
Several studies say it's good for you in this one way. I mean, that's the thing. Just about whether you're talking about a drug or a type of food, just about anything out there is good for you in some ways, even when you break it down, and bad for you in others. I mean, break it down with water. Of course, most people don't drink enough water. They say that you should drink, whatever it is, 8 glasses a day. You're better to err on the side of drinking a little bit too much water than being dehydrated, I would think. But you can actually kill yourself by drinking too much water at once.
Too much of anything is poison.
Too much is, yeah, I mean, just because one aspirin cures your headache doesn't mean you should take the whole bottle at once, or you're probably going to die.
A whole bottle, you said? That's a lot of aspirin.
Well, that's why you probably shouldn't take it, because you'll probably die.
Yeah. Well, and this is a little bottle.
5
or 6 tablets.
I still wouldn't recommend
Anyways,
it. But
I'd just like to point it out because it fit my worldview just perfectly, because I was at the point where I'm like, wow, I'm drinking way too much coffee because I don't sleep at night. And then it's a cyclical pattern where it's just a snowball down a hill, drink too much coffee, can't sleep at night, too hot. So I thought I'd bring it to the viewer's attention. Alzheimer's. Get rid of it by drinking coffee. Well, in reality, there's more studies has to be done, as Nick said, and too much of anything is poison. So drink your coffee in moderation, unless you don't want Alzheimer's disease. That's all.
Yeah, I guess good advice.
Yeah.
Who knows? The thing with studies
These
studies
come out every other day.
Who knows if it actually, in 2 years we could be reading a study that says it actually makes
causes
it worse.
Alzheimer's.
Right.
Yeah.
Studies go back and forth all the time. Just because somebody got a research grant to study something doesn't mean that their research actually is showing the real world.
Right. There's always a black and a white side, or a red and a blue side, and people will always take their sides, and I'm going with the coffee side this time, Nick. So that's my worldview. That's that.
All right.
Maybe it's hypocritical.
If it makes you feel better about drinking.
Oh, it sure does. This week, anyways. I was doing great before this week, but it's the heat.
Yeah, well, when you don't sleep, that's usually when you
can't stand the
get
heat.
Caught in that spiral.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we're going to be talking about dry ice and one poor disabled man who just well, he can't seem to get around without being drunk, and he can't seem to be drunk without being on a wheelchair, and it's making his life very difficult. We'll be getting into that and the dry ice. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Am I on? Am I on?
You're on.
Do I talk now? Do I talk now? I'm Gardner Goldsmith,
She's here. I
and
think she's up by where they're doing the show.
you're watching Free Minds TV. Open your mind, baby. Tell others to do the same.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. It still is Toby here with you.
And Nick.
All right, log on to our website, freemindsmedia.org or .com is the website, and from there we have all the TV shows, the radio archives, an old blog post that Nick put up there, and a few other oldies. There hasn't been a lot of recent blog posts, but it's up there. You can poke around, all up at freemindsmedia.com. All right, we want to get into it, Nick, talking about a man. When we went to break, you said I said it wrong. He can't seem to get on his wheelchair without being drunk, and he can't seem to be drunk without getting in his wheelchair. The point of it is the man likes to drink and then get in his wheelchair because that's how he gets around.
Right. I mean, I don't know. It's not as if
is-
he's getting into the wheelchair for the sake of
His
it.
legs are broken, and he likes to drink.
Right.
And he admittedly has an alcohol problem, but he still wants to drink and get around. Doesn't
Right.
want to just stay home.
But instead of walking.
But
he
instead
has
of
to
walking,
use-
he has to use his wheelchair. But this isn't any wheelchair, Nick. This is a wheelchair with a motor, which makes it quite the problem.
Right. I mean, we're talking about one of the mobility scooters, like a Rascal or a Hoveround or any of the ones that some of the viewers might be familiar with. They don't go particularly fast. David Gorman admitted driving while almost 3 times the legal limit on his 8-mile-per-hour scooter.
Ooh, 8 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's a maximum speed. That's not the typical speed of operation. The disabled man has been banned from driving for 3 years after being caught drunk driving on his mobility scooter, which I would argue is not driving. David Gorman admitted driving while almost 3 times the drunk driving limit on his electric scooter, it's electric powered, along a pavement in Pine Hill Road, Exeter. And I believe this is coming from the UK based on some of the language that they use in here. So the ban means he now has to get around using a manual wheelchair where you actually have to turn the wheels.
Well, that goes much faster than 8 miles an hour. It seems
If
that
you're
he
going
was
downhill-
much safer in the one that was limited to 8 miles an hour than the one that, if you're going downhill, Nick, who goes like 2 miles an hour in a wheelchair? Not some drunk man. He's going to be zipping around, Nick.
Maybe, I don't know how
much zip he's
how
got?
much vigor he has. Exeter Magistrates Court heard police were called on Wednesday, June 9th at 4:30 p.m. by someone raising concerns about a man who had been drinking in the area of Whipton Village Road. Of Whipton, believe it or not. Whipton Village Road is in the town of Whipton. When officers got to the scene, they found Gorman, 45, on his scooter in the road. As police pulled up, he drove the scooter along Pine Hill Road towards the city center. Police officers called out for him to stop, and then he stopped and identified himself. The prosecutor said that the officers, obviously, they smelled liquor, which obviously they would have. He was breathalyzed, and he was about 3 times the legal limit in the UK, which they don't give blood alcohol content. They actually give like micrograms of alcohol per 100 milliliters of breath. So I really don't know how drunk he was. My understanding was
apparently
the UK
not
had a
too
lower,
drunk
I think the
because-
UK has a lower limit, though. I think it's like 0.06.
Yeah, they said in the article that he wasn't swerving his scoot-a-boot. He was driving straight, according to the officers' reports. And the issue that they were having with him, Nick, was not that he was driving dangerously and recklessly. It was that he stunk of booze, and they thought he was boozed up, and he was over the legal limit. He was drinking on the scooter, I think. So when they breathalyzed him, I mean, he had just been swigging. I don't know if they brought him back to the station and waited. I don't know how the procedure works. But according to the own officer's reports, he wasn't acting drunk. So how much of a danger to others was he? I don't care if he's a danger to himself. I'll let that drunk man be a fool. He wants to go drive his motorized wheelchair into a river or something. That's fine by me, as long as he's not putting others in danger.
And yeah, I mean, there was no evidence that he was actually driving impaired or caused an immediate threat to anyone else. It's just that he was a drunk on a wheelchair. Apparently, he was disabled back in 1984 while training for the armed forces.
So been a drunk on a wheelchair for a while.
Basically, the government training crippled him, and now he doesn't, his life is probably
That's kind of
not as
unfair.
great as it could have been.
So what are you supposed to do if you're drunk in
Now
a
they hassle
wheelchair? Can you?
In the UK, apparently don't operate on the. When they say on the pavement, I assume they mean he actually got into a roadway.
Well, those people in the UK, they use funny words, don't they?
You're right, but a pavement could also
Craziness.
mean like a sidewalk.
Oh. Well,
It may have been a sidewalk. I don't know.
who knows? It's taking his license away for his wheelchair.
No, they're not taking his license
to
away.
buy a wheel. Well, then how are they gonna?
There's no license. I mean, it's a mobility scooter. They're not.
But don't they say in the article he can't buy a new mobility scooter or something?
Right. The court was told during the proceedings that there is no driving license required for a mobility scooter.
Then how can you take away their
Apparently,
right?
they haven't required that yet in the UK. However,
Well, maybe they should.
a driving disqualification
JK.
stops a person using all mechanically propelled vehicles, including scooters. And mechanically propelled is, I'm not sure how they define that term, because that would even include a bicycle.
A bicycle, and it's illegal in
There's
the U.S.
mechanics.
to drive drunk on a bike.
Even a manual wheelchair, you could argue that you're not
Well,
actually
fine.
dragging yourself with your hands. I mean, there are wheels and there are bearings. It's not a very complicated mechanism, but you're using a mechanism to propel yourself. You're just using your arms in that case instead of your feet with gears like you would with a bicycle.
So
I don't
guess
get it.
what it comes down to is if you're disabled, you lose the ability to drink in public or something, or at least over the legal limit. Unless you have
Right,
someone
or go home.
or a
I
buddy
mean-
to piggyback you around, throw you over his shoulder, carry you from
Right.
place to place.
I mean, then you're still facing a drunk, whatever they call it there, a drunken disorderly or a drunken public charge.
Yeah, I
But-
guess if you had your buddy slung over your shoulder, the bartender might not serve you a drink.
Right. They might not buy that his legs don't actually. And see, that's, I mean, that's the thing here.
Quite the conundrum.
Doesn't it seem more like if, what this guy was doing seems equivalent to me what an able-bodied person would be doing.
Well, yeah.
Walking home.
Walking home, getting home,
For which they wouldn't lose their
traveling down the
license.
road.
And it doesn't seem a whole lot riskier than a drunk guy walking down the road.
No.
A drunk guy could stagger and cause people to, other people to step out of his way into traffic, which I guess would be the argument here. Or a drunk guy could wander into traffic and cause a car accident. But nobody considers that drunk driving.
No.
Nobody considers that operating a vehicle while intoxicated. So
Well, maybe what they should do.
why not just treat the handicapped guy in a somewhat equitable
Pretend
way?
like it
doesn't
was
seem
his
very equitable.
legs. Pretend the wheelchair was his legs.
That's what they're substituting for.
Because it's kind of like saying you can't use your legs while drunk for the next 3 years. It's harsh.
You can't use your legs
To
at
him.
all.
Oh yeah, but for
That's
him.
not just when he's drunk. You can't use the
No, but
scooter
his legs are
anytime.
his scooter.
Right.
So
He's
essentially.
saying you can't use your legs for 3 years.
Oh yeah, not when you're drunk, just ever. Oh, the poor
Yeah.
man. Ever he can't use it when drunk. Oh man. Poor man. Anyways, my heart goes out to you, all drunk.
He did apparently contact alcohol services, which I guess is probably like
Help you
their
drink?
AA.
Oh,
No, I think,
It's like
I think
I
it's
thought it
help
was like
you-
the complaint
No.
agency. I'm trying to drink
think
here.
it's-
My government's repressing my right to get drunk.
I think it's like the help you stop problem.
It's not the
drinking.
support, not the
Right.
enabler line.
No. So apparently he's getting help for his drinking problem,
Good
which he
for him.
admittedly has.
Well, yeah. He has
I
no
don't
legs.
think I don't think we're.
I might have a drinking
arguing
problem too if I had no legs.
I don't think we're out here arguing that it's a good way to be.
No. We're saying what else he got? It's an old crip.
I don't know how old he is. 45.
Well, it's old to me.
Oh, you're not gonna help his.
Oh, I've just
self-esteem any if
upset
he
all our
sees
older
this.
viewers. All right, moving right along. Let's talk about dry ice and the dangers. Well, the real dangers from dry ice is, yes, you might get some frostbite if you handle it too much, but the bigger danger is if the police catch you with it, I guess. Or that is if they catch you having fun with it. Mom and boy accused in ice bomb case. The mother of a 14-year-old boy accused of making bombs out of dry ice appeared in court on Tuesday. The woman, 39, is charged with possession of a destructive device and child abuse. She was arrested over the weekend and released on her own recognizance. Police were called to the home near 137th Street and Z Circle on Saturday. Police found and detonated an ice bomb in a plastic bottle.
How do you detonate? Don't
You put
pour
on the
water?
cap.
Oh, right, because it supplements.
This is ridiculous, folks. Assistant Douglas County Attorney Eric Wells said that the boy admitted to making the bomb. Why are they calling it a bomb? And that his mother knew he was doing so. I guess that's where the child abuse comes in. She let him do it. 14-year-old boy putting dry ice in a bottle. Yeah, this is quite the abusive mother out here. Careful, folks. They're everywhere. My parents let me do this too. Oh, better not get them in trouble. The boy was set to appear in court on Tuesday afternoon on juvenile court, accused of possessing a destructive device. How is this going to bode well for him in his teen years, going around having a juvie record saying...
Destructive device charges are usually a felony.
Well, that's the point. Destructive, it's skewing. Do people know what this is, what we're talking about? Let's throw the video up. Check it. This is just... That's my video, Rick. You don't have to do anything. I put that in post. Don't you worry. Yeah. This is a bottle going... Pff.
Yeah. I mean, well, dry ice is just... It's CO2, isn't it?
Yeah.
So essentially what you've got here is it's the same stuff in a bottle of soda.
Yeah.
It's like if you shook up a bottle of soda and there was enough gas in there to just make a plastic bottle pop.
Yeah, this is the equivalent of
And it's a
arresting
destructive
people
device.
for putting Mentos in Coca-Cola bottles.
I mean, how broad is the definition for destructive device? Is it anything that could destroy something?
And
I could see maybe, I could almost, not that I really think there should be a law against making explosives, as long as they do it responsibly and don't put anyone in imminent danger. Probably should
This
be over
isn't
the age
an
of 8.
explosive, Nick.
You're right, I'm just saying, not that I think there should be that law anyway.
This is like
You should probably
blowing
be
up
over the age of 18.
a balloon and letting it pop.
Exactly. But there's still a little bit of a shockwave. So where do they draw that line? I mean, it's not as if he...
A balloon has a shockwave.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That
So
air is hitting your face in a
Exactly.
destructive manner.
So where do we draw that line?
Well, I guess I'm... You know, my
It clearly
parents...
doesn't seem like it was meant to destroy
I remember, I
anything.
think I was more like 10 when my uncle sent us some steaks and dry ice. They packed in dry ice. So my parents took the steak and they gave me the dry ice, and I picked up the recycling bin and I went out in the field and had myself a wonderful afternoon. Lots of fun. Not suggesting people do this because apparently I could get in trouble. Don't do this. This is bad.
Apparently it's illegal.
Guess. It's asinine. These people, God, these police people must be embarrassed to have to be the arresters.
Probably.
And Assistant Douglas County Attorney Eric Wells apparently is proud because he's pursuing charges in this case. Man, oh man, this is what happens when you don't have a king or a queen to rebel against people, Nick. People get soft. And they allow policies like this to go through, and then we're arresting people for putting dry ice in Coca-Cola bottles and watching them go pop. Wow.
Which apparently is an epidemic. It's apparently...
It's not
who's being harmed by it, even if it's going
Well,
on?
I did hear some stories where the cap pops off and leaves some welts and stuff on people.
It's even conceivable to me that you might be able to injure yourself. You can do the same thing with fireworks.
Well, we're out of time anyways, Nick. Different Opinion FMTV at freemindsmedia.org is the email, or freemindsmedia.org is the website, org.com. However you like to get there from there, there's contact links, ways to help the show, voting for the show, our archives, radio, all that stuff. freemindsmedia.org or .com. Until next week, it has been Tobias here with you.
And Nick.
Have a good one.